Hi, thanks for joining us tonight. Tonight we're going to talk with Charles Altendorf, and first met Charles at a D2 meeting. I think it was the first meeting we had after I met Randall, actually, and I. The interesting thing about Charles is right off he struck me as somebody who had been around for a while, but I had no idea who he was. But that's, that turns out to be kind of accurate because you're new to LPKY,
Right.
but you've been around for a while.
I guess you could say in some ways I've been politically active since I was 18, but I haven't been in LPKY that long.
Sure.
And I've also been national since 2012. But
Very nice.
I do feel youngish when I sit around and I start talking with people like you or Marcia or Ken. That obviously I haven't been around that long.
He's stabbing at us, Marcia.
Or actually out by me, it's been really neat to get to know Mark Daly. He's a really cool guy with law stories too.
Yeah. He's been around forever. He kind of feels like the permanent state at large.
Yeah. Well, and it's actually really great you bring it up. Talking about affiliation tonight, but also,
right.
It's the great thing about these older members. My parents are in a German club in Cincinnati, and they've been around since 1964. They're like the oldest German club there,
right?
And they ended up making an actual role called the President Emeritus. And all it was is just like, here we got an older person just consulting us every once in a while, and I thought that was really neat because what happens in organizations is it's often like there's a bunch of old people, then there's a bunch of young people, then there's a bunch of old people.
Right.
And that guy really made the transition really good the last few decades.
Well, since you mentioned being politically active since you were 18, what sort of things have you been up to? What have you done since you've been 18?
Well, let's see. So actually, the first time I really started getting political and getting annoying to my teachers was in 8th grade, because we were reading up on what was it now? I went to the library, and in this library they had this book that was like American Politics for Dummies, and in there they had this thing called the Big Tent Theory.
Okay.
And I read it in there, and I read about how there's two big tents, and there's room for lots of ideas in these two big tents. And I kind of thought that was garbage. And ever since then, it's been one steady slope since then. But yeah, so in high school, I was getting more involved. I was pretty outspokenly anti-Iraq war before it was cool. Back then when I was in Boone County, a lot of people were still pro-Iraq war back then. I graduated in 2007. And, American Idiot, that album came out like 2006 or something. And so I was like, I don't like this idea, and what's crazy about it is I don't even have any real disrespect for the military. My grandfathers, one fought in World War II, the other one fought in Korea. It's like, this is a really dumb war, and I don't really think that any of these things are justified.
Right.
And, as time went on, more and more stuff emerged. And now I think if you did a public poll, people would say we probably shouldn't have gone. But, and so that was I was starting to get involved in my classes. I did join the political science club and immediately left the political science club because the first meeting devolved into a big fight over what we should call Jewish people. And I was like, whoa.
So, I mean, that's one of the things about the Iraq War is you always have these people who talk about being, against it after the fact, or they talk about why they were wrongly for it. They'll admit to it, but frankly, that's a little more classy than just freaking lying about where you were.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it is kind of important to note, what not just the person, but where they stood, but what thought process got them there. because it's often the way of thinking, the way of approaching the sets of problems that either gets you repeatedly into or out of trouble. And
Right.
I think that's why our founding fathers went the direction of no entangling alliances, because they understood where this led. It wasn't like the cool hip thing to say at the time and that was the end of it. It's that there was some discipline to it. They were students of history. They were learning from philosophers and writers who were also students of history. It's not a random thing.
And that's the other thing. I took AP US History my sophomore year of high school. So I've always been a bit of a history buff, and particularly an American history buff. And I think that's probably a bit also what influenced my views. I've been a big follower of Thomas Jefferson since middle school. So,
Right.
and Thomas Jefferson probably would have never gotten involved in that sort of a war, right, based on principle. But
Right.
that's right. It's interesting when you talk about what formulates that, and there's a general public, I think, a little bit disconnect from the founding fathers, and if people would read more of their writings, they'd be like, oh wow, these guys were actually quite brilliant, and they had a lot of interesting views on things that are still applicable today.
Well, we're not really likely to change people on that front.
Right.
And instead we have to do other things like get engaged with the community, and
Right.
help them learn in modern times that these ideas can help them and help them overcome their problems. And we need like an army of people to do that. Which, what was this about? Oh yes, growing B6.
Right. So, in a short summary, so after that, I graduated and I went to college. And my freshman year of college was when Stephen Beshear, Andy's dad, ran for governor.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was young at the time. I still thought I was a Democrat because in Boone County, it's largely Republican. I'm sure everybody knows. And that was the only, I had not heard of the libertarian movement back then. So
Sure.
I joined, I campaigned for him. And I was still kind of a registered Dem until Obama won in 2008. And then I noticed he made Hillary Clinton Secretary of State. And that was just it for me. I was like, tear it up now. How can you do this after, what this person has done to you?
Right.
Not even just her bad views, but what her camp did to him personally. I had a huge problem with that. And then I started reading a lot of Ron Paul and watching a lot of his stuff. And then 2012, I officially switched my registration over, and it's been a fun journey ever since. And I was really lucky in Indiana in 2016. I got a little extra time, so I became a county coordinator in Owen County, Indiana, which is northwest of Bloomington. And then I moved to Hardin County because I said I got to get back to Kentucky, and and that's where I started meeting Randall. Me and him both started going to the D3 meetings because it was closer for us than to go out to Bowling Green, and that's when we started saying, hey, there's this district back then, the second district, and I think it still is. I mean, there's a lot of people who I think are libertarian minded in that district that just, for whatever reason, had not received the message well enough, or were new moved in people or what, and over 6 months, I found, I literally know why. I got the list of 300 people that supposedly registered libertarian in the last year, and contacted, I didn't even make it all the way through. I made it through about 200, and I got 8 of them to show up to meetings, so we were able to form a county affiliate.
Nice.
So I was going to tell the less PC story about that, but I decided to spare you because you are running for Congress. So I'm going to tell a more PC example. But what my dad told me, I was struggling to find a job when I first got out of college, because this was 2011. It was right during the middle of the Great Recession.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, when when I got a job this was in the late 80s, he said, I put out 160 resumes before I landed my first job.
Wow.
And in Milwaukee, a fairly large city. What I say to everybody when they're starting out trying to do affiliation and recruit people is it's just a numbers game. It's purely just a numbers game. I don't have some kind of special science, I just eventually, if you talk to 300 people, you're probably going to hit it off with 5. Or especially people who have actually taken the time to register a vote libertarian.
Yeah,
so
it sounds like Charles always got a girl to dance with at the dance.
Actually,
eventually.
I did. Eventually.
There you go. Eventually,
I always did. But yeah,
right.
So yeah, there was a less PC story there I could have told. But anyway, so why I say this is we came in here and I'm kind of honored to be brought on here to talk about this, because I don't even know if I'm considered even a good person at this or not, but it is a numbers game, and you find when you do this stuff, you meet just interesting people along the way too. Like I met a guy who was a former Marine who fought in Iraq, and he didn't even join.
Let me back up just a bit and help you out, though.
Yeah.
You don't know if you're the right person. You're the D6 chair.
Yes.
You're going to be the person. You're the person.
Yes. I did inherit a district that had 30 members, though, so it wasn't it wasn't too big a deal. But yes, we have a lot of things in the works I'll get to in a minute.
Well, this is not the year to sit on one's laurels. You got to get your butt out there and do some stuff, man. That's what this is about. You're going to be on here and you're going to be telling people how much fun it's going to be to hang out, and you're going to be telling all the great works we're going to do. Really, I'm like, we're literally reading the outline. This is what we're going to tell you. And we want you to once they're sold, what do they do next? Do you want them just contacting you on Facebook or?
So I'll back that up a bit. So what usually happens, right, is I was just reaching out to people through Facebook or Now, when somebody signs up, I get a phone number so I can text them, when they officially register with the party, right? We sign non-disclosure agreements. I want to make that clear. It's not just any kind of random contacting. But these are people who've literally signed up and said, I want to volunteer. So, there's what I usually, so there's this constant tug, and we'll talk about this probably more later, but there's always going to be people around the movement that I would call your activists. Is that a proper word?
Sure.
Or your party people, they want to go around and they want to be out there. People that want to be out there with the giant taxation is theft sign, or they want to be out there with the porcupine shirt on, or whatever, but they're not always the same people that want to do the administrative side, right?
Well, you haven't named, but an important note, you haven't named anyone we don't need. We need all those people.
We need all those people.
We need all those people.
So that's where the sort of tug comes in, right? So when you're first trying to, for instance, see, I'm lucky in D6 it was already formed, but when you're first trying to create a affiliate, that's the tug, right? Like right now I'm working with a couple of people on D5 as we speak. Okay. And that's the tug. They're like, well, should we hold social events just to get people to come, or do we want to wait till we have serious people to do serious meetings, right? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously. So what happened in Hardin was, the good thing about what we had with Hardin was, as D2 was already meeting there. So we already had the meeting side of it. So we could just putz around and do social things until we got the people recruited to establish a party there.
Right.
I find that in my opinion, you got to decide what your goal is, right? Like if your goal is to have fun, don't get me wrong. I absolutely love to have fun, and I think the camp out tradition that's been started in D2 will be great over the years. And I like going to a good protest. I didn't make it to them, but some other people in our district went to the ones in Frankfurt.
Mhm.
And that stuff is fun, and there's definitely a place for that. But at the same time, what I've always felt was the thing that sort of the glue is the monthly meetings finally being established. It's the glue that holds everything together. You know,
you got to have that sooner or later. But
right,
how you do it. I mean, that's a thing. Is you don't get to actually decide how to ride the wave before you find the wave. you gotta meet the people. It's like, okay, we're definitely gonna go eat at Pizza Hut. Now I just gotta go find the people. It doesn't work that way because they might not like pizza. You gotta go find the people, start talking to people, and go, Pizza Hut? Where do you guys want to go?
But fortunately now, if we do get D5 to come online, there will be districts for everybody. So anybody else here who's not in any of these XCOMs that's interested in helping create more events, you will be able to piggyback off of your district for these things now going forward. Hopefully. So it will be less of a pressure to get a monthly meeting established.
Right. Well, Don Stacy was on at 8:01, so he's
he's listening. He's
like, yeah. You're like, I'm lucky because I already had 30 people and blah 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 blah. Like,
no, to be fair, in Hardin County, I didn't know of anybody before we got that party established. So it is possible. It can be done. If you build it, they will come.
Right.
But so fun, I know you talked about, so sort of the fun things that can be done is, so you can do at the beginning, you got to do low cost things like a camp out or things where money's not spent. But then the end goal at some point is once you're affiliated, you have your own treasury. And I don't know all the things they do in Warren County, and they do some things in Barron County, but that gives you all kinds of things. You can start doing beer calls, paying for booze at events, go to gun rallies, all kinds of things that people want to do. Mm-hmm. So, in the beginning, that's going to be aided by the district, hopefully, with all the districts established. But as time goes on, that becomes your own thing. And that's part of why it's so important to eventually affiliate, because
meeting periodically for beer and chips is an okay start too.
Right.
Get to know the people and figure out what you want to do.
I guess I'll ask you a question. You've been in the party longer than me. How were you first reached out to?
That's interesting. So I found David. I've told this story before, but from a slightly different dimension. So I was one who had sort of loved money at National off and on. I discovered I was libertarian in 2000. I was one of those guys who was libertarian, and then I learned the word. It's like, oh, that explains some stuff. But I saw that this guy was going to run against Mitch McConnell in 2014 because I really hadn't done anything with LPKY. I mean, I'd maybe been to their website or something, but I hadn't really done anything with them. And the guy was in my flippin' county, so I had to go meet him. And he ended up having a meet and greet, and some of us were there. And this guy on the other end of the table said, "Hey, Rob, do you want to be Dave's campaign manager?" I said, no. So the guy on the other side of the table or other end of the table goes, well, are you willing to be Dave's county manager? I'm like, yeah, okay. And of course, that person was Ken Molman. And but think about that. So think about that actually has some meaning in this context, because you can gain members who are interested in just hanging out with other libertarians, and really don't underestimate that. Just the idea of hanging out with people who think similar to you feels really good in this world these days. I mean, it is really nice. Don't underestimate that. That's why the campouts are really awesome. I mean, going and hanging out at a restaurant for a couple of hours, that's nice. Getting away from everybody in like a camp out, it's really awesome. It really is. Yeah. But in my case, you had a person who was interested in a specific candidate, and you had somebody who is task oriented or mission oriented, and all that Ken had to do to pull me in is he's like, this guy's here trying to do something. Hey, do you want to do something? That's basically it. So you recruit the person after you meet the person, right? See what motivates them, and that's why we have the taxation is theft people, on the hat, and you have we have all types in this party, but we agree that people should be free to do what they want to do as long as they're not harming other people. That does come with personal responsibility. So, we're effectively about moving decision making as close to the person as we can get. And that's kind of where we end up disagreeing sometimes, is I'm more of a minarchist, and I'll whip out the law and show you, the foundation of the law and why I believe it needs to be there. And, I think police are a good idea. I think it's gone a little awry and we need to rein some things in, but I don't think that's fundamentally because we have police. I think that's because we keep asking police to do more and more and more and more as we want to assert more and more and more control on our neighbors. Right. And we need to cut that out. We need to back off, and people are going to do some stuff we don't like. Okay. It's better than having people kneel on human beings' necks for 9 minutes. Right. So some of these people are dying. Some of this violence is going on. Some of these businesses are being looted. Fundamentally because some people wanted to tell some other people how to live. That's it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anyway, so that's why, if you're on that mission, get to the damn meetings. That's the why.
Yeah. So that's why I say, what I sort of did was, I would start. So it's good to have events when you reach out to somebody and say, hey, I saw that you were interested in the party. We're having this event. And generally speaking, that is the most effective way that things happen. Now, the craziest thing that happened in Hardin County was I contacted a guy, and he had 2 Facebook accounts. So I contacted his old one. This is Philip Clark, by the way. And he actually then reached out back to me and said, hey, you guys still doing anything? And I told him we were going to be at the county fair, and we actually needed something to do at the booth. And he just offered to volunteer at the fair the whole week, which that was amazing.
That's epic.
That was something I never expected to happen. So there's a lot of good things that come out of this. I've had a lot of interesting, fun experiences, just meeting a younger guy than me that wanted to go that far with it, or, meeting this veteran, and we met another there's another veteran who who's sadly leaving Hardin County, but that's okay. We have somebody to replace him. But he actually survived an IED attack in Iraq.
Oh yeah.
And that was just listening to his story. And it's a lot about listening to people's stories, and that's sort of what has been amazing for me in this process is I've just met so many people and listened to so many interesting stories. And I wouldn't change it for a bit. So that's sort of the fun part of it. That's the enjoyable part of it for me. I guess I am kind of an extrovert. I don't mind people, which actually makes me kind of rare, I think, in the libertarian movement. But so I just try and get people connected.
I try to drag people on this show. Believe me, I've noticed we have some introverts. and frankly, this is sort of a crazy admission, but I'm an introvert. Like the first show I interviewed somebody on, I got off, and I mean, I felt like I was going to be a puddle on the floor. I was so exhausted. I had nothing left, and they were a friend of mine. It's but you do it anyway. You do it anyway because it's part of the mission. And last night we did that telethon. I was on for like 3.5 hours, and at the end of it, after talking to I talked to probably 20 people, maybe more.
Yeah.
I wasn't fazed. I was fine. I was like, do it again. Do it again.
Do it again. I'm fired up. I'm going to do this every day until election day. No. Right. Yeah. So that leads me into sort of, now we take this to the next level. There's an affiliation guide. If you want to see it, I can send it to you. You can contact me. I am the only Charles Julian Altendorf on the internet. I'm not hard to find. So what you need, right? And this is where it comes into the hard part, because so we have all these fun experiences. We hang out with people. We do things. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you need a practical thing. You need a board, an XCOM, right? And when you try and form that, you need a chair, a treasurer, and a vice chair secretary, right?
One of the two. Or both. You can have both, but you need at least one.
I actually recommend when you try to form any XCOM, you try and get 5, because you never know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. You just don't. You get 5 libertarians in one place, you have no idea what's going to happen. So what's crazy about that is, and it looks like we got somebody in there saying, hook me up. You'll be hooked up. Don't worry. Anyway, so what I find the hardest part is getting somebody to be a treasurer. People don't like doing money. They don't like it. Makes them nervous. And I don't really have a good answer for that. It's always a point of struggle. But, it's worth it. Because at the end of the day.
Well, if the as long as the XCOM isn't stupid, as long as the executive committee just reports to them things, and be diligent. If somebody's doing an in-kind contribution, and I've been guilty of this before, but if somebody's doing an in-kind contribution, they need to aggressively report that to the treasurer. But as long as that's done, you're talking about a few minutes on, I believe, a quarterly basis. I've not done it, but I've seen the forms because they're somewhat similar to the KREF forms and the FEC forms. It's not that much work. It's simply a matter of it's work you really have to do. That's all. You can't mess around. It's not hard. It's not that time consuming. It might actually be one of the less time consuming posts, but there's things you have to get done timely. So I think people are more afraid of it than anything. And truth be known, we have had some treasurers who aren't good at the timely thing. They get disconnected or distracted, as we all sometimes do. just like what just happened with Charles. He got distracted with something and clicked on something, and now he's frozen in time. So while Charles is gone, something I was wanting to loop back to anyway is general party structure in Kentucky. So we have state, we have district, and we have county. And the reason we do that is we want to empower counties to deal with things at a local level. So, people who live in the county are going to know about fairs, they're going to know about events, they're going to know about things like that. We don't want them reporting all the way up to state and state making a decision as to whether or not to allocate funds. That's dumb. That's like something the D's and R's would do. We don't do that. Instead, what we do is the county just goes ahead and makes the decision for themselves. So the county decides what events to do. The county decides, what their missions are. You decide what your socials are. You decide, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about, you don't ride the wave before you find the wave. You meet the people. You figure out what you want to do as a group. You do have to have the bare minimums that Charles was talking about before you affiliate. You have to have those. But in terms of what you do as a group, it's up to you. And quite frankly, if you want to affiliate and just be a group that just gets together for socials monthly, and you don't do anything else, but you do the reporting, you do the meetings, you're a placeholder is basically what I'm saying. If you're a placeholder being sociable until active people come, I'm probably not going to sing your praises, but you're not going to be my hero is what I'm saying, but it's still cool. It's still productive. I'm not going to go bashing you either. It's still a good thing. I want you to, okay, I'll sing your praises a little, just, understand that you're not going to be the heroes compared to the county next door that's really kicking butt on everything. But if that's what you want to do, that's fine, because it's a starting place. It's a foundation. And maybe I don't know what's best. That kind of gets back to the fatal conceit idea, and it gets back to why we're structured the way we are idea, is you meet and you decide what's right for you. So I was hoping that while I explained that, Charles would get reconnected, but it doesn't look like he's going to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get with Charles afterward, and I'm going to add comments on who you need to contact to find out, or where you need to look. Basically, how do you find out about district meetings, in case you want to stop by a district meeting, because it's open to the public. You can just come drop in and see Charles and crew in action. You can do the same for any of the county affiliates. Or if your county doesn't have an affiliate, then you might want to become a county coordinator. And if you're going to become a county coordinator, you're going to need to contact Charles. So I'll get you information on how to do that too. We'll get that in the comments. And then, of course, if you're not an LPKY member, somewhere along the way, you're going to want to join LPKY, and you can just go to lpky.org and go to sign up, and I will get you a link for that. Giving up on Charles. One last thing is, of course, if you want, you can help me out. You can go to perry4ky.com. I'll look at this. Since I'm plugging myself, I'll get off my butt. You can go here. You can check out who I am. I'm in District 2. We're targeting at this at District 6. So you got Frank Harris. Go support Frank Harris. Sorry, I don't have his link handy. He's on Facebook, though. And if you really want to help me out, you can donate to me. But the big thing, there's no excuse for you to not do this next one. The big thing I want you to do is I want you to like, comment, share. I want you to get this out to your peers. that's how the networking part of social networking happens. And frankly, I should have added that at the very, very top. So that's a way you can all contribute. So I will go collect that information. I will get it in the comments. I want to thank you for joining. Thank you for watching the video. And I will see you all next time. Have a good evening.